Have you ever noticed the voice that speaks to you in the quiet moments of your day? Not the voice of others around you, but that constant companion in your mind that comments on everything you do, everything you are, everything you might become. This voice has been with you for so long that perhaps you believe it is you. But what if I told you that this voice, which often speaks words of judgment, fear, and limitation, is not your true voice at all? We all carry within us a kind of darkness, not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of misunderstanding, of false beliefs, of words that wound rather than heal. This darkness whispers that you are not enough, that you have failed, that others are judging you, that life is meant to be a struggle. It speaks with the authority of truth, yet it is built entirely on lies. Consider this moment right now. As you listen to these words, notice what your mind is already doing. Perhaps it is agreeing, disagreeing, comparing, analyzing, or preparing its next thought. This mental activity, this constant stream of inner commentary has become so normal that we rarely question its nature or its source. Yet within this stream lies both our suffering and our potential freedom. The darkness I speak of is not something foreign or separate from you. It lives in the words you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. It lives in the assumptions you make about what others think of you. It lives in the stories you tell yourself about why you cannot have love, why you cannot be happy, why you cannot be free. This darkness has become so familiar that you may have forgotten there is any other way to live. But here is what the ancient Toltecs understood, and what you can understand too. This darkness is not your natural state. You were not born with these limiting beliefs, these harsh judgments, these fears that seem to control your life. The voice of darkness was learned, which means it can be unlearned. The beliefs that create your suffering were adopted, which means they can be released. Think of a small child, perhaps 2 or 3 years old, playing in a garden. Watch how they move through the world with such natural joy, such curiosity, such complete acceptance of themselves. They do not worry about whether they are good enough. They do not judge their appearance or their abilities. They do not carry the weight of past mistakes or future fears. This is your natural state. This is the light that exists beneath the darkness you have learned to carry. The darkness you experience is like a cloud that has covered the sun. The cloud appears real. It affects your experience of warmth and light. But it does not change the sun itself. The sun continues to shine behind the cloud, waiting patiently for the cloud to pass. Your true nature, your authentic self, is like this sun. It has never been damaged by the darkness you carry. It has never been diminished by the harsh words you have spoken to yourself. It remains whole, waiting for you to remember. Take a moment now to breathe deeply and feel into this truth. The way you see others begins to change, and consequently the way they respond to you begins to change as well. This is not magic in the mystical sense, but it is magic in the sense of understanding how human connection truly works. For so long, you may have been looking at the people in your life through the lens of your own inner darkness. When the judge is active in your mind, criticizing and evaluating yourself, it naturally extends this criticism to others. When the victim is telling stories about how you have been hurt or misunderstood, it looks for evidence that others are likely to hurt or misunderstand you again. But when you begin to speak light to yourself, when you begin to treat your own heart with kindness and respect, you start to see others through the lens of this same kindness and respect. You begin to recognize that everyone you meet is fighting the same battle you have been fighting, the battle between their true nature and the voice of darkness they learn to carry. Consider someone in your life who has hurt you, someone whose words or actions have created pain in your heart. For a moment, instead of seeing them through the story of how they have wronged you, try to see them as a human being who was once a small child, innocent and pure, who learned to speak darkness to themselves just as you did. Try to see them as someone whose hurtful actions come not from their true nature, but from their own wounds, their own fears, their own collection of beliefs about how to survive in what seemed like a dangerous world. This does not mean excusing harmful behavior or allowing yourself to be mistreated. Speaking light does not mean becoming passive or losing your ability to set boundaries. In fact, when you are grounded in light, when you are speaking to yourself with love and respect, you become much clearer about what kinds of treatment you will and will not accept. You become better at protecting yourself, not from a place of fear and reactivity, but from a place of wisdom and self-care. When someone speaks to you with anger or criticism, you have a choice in how to receive their words. You can take their words personally, allowing their darkness to trigger your own darkness, creating a cycle of attack and defense that serves no one. Or you can recognize that their words are coming from their own pain, their own programming, their own relationship with themselves, and choose not to make their suffering into your suffering. This is perhaps one of the most challenging aspects of speaking light. Learning not to absorb the darkness that others project toward you. When someone is speaking from their wounds, their words carry the energy of those wounds. If you are not careful, you can take on their pain as if it were your own, their beliefs as if they were true, their limitations as if they applied to you. But when you are practicing speaking light to yourself, you develop a kind of immunity to others' darkness. You recognize that what they are saying about you is actually what they believe about themselves. Their criticism of you is their own self-criticism projected outward. Their anger toward you is their own anger toward themselves, redirected because it feels too dangerous to face directly. With this understanding, you can respond to others' darkness with compassion rather than retaliation, with curiosity rather than defensiveness, with love rather than fear. You can say to yourself, this person is suffering right now. Their words are coming from their pain, not from truth. I don't need to take this on as my reality. Speaking light to others does not mean telling them what you think they want to hear or avoiding difficult conversations. It means seeing past their masks, their defenses, their learned patterns of behavior, and speaking to their true nature, the part of them that exists beneath all the programming, all the wounds, all the fears. When you speak to someone's true nature rather than to their personality, something shifts in the dynamic between you. People feel seen, heard, and understood in a way that perhaps they have not experienced before. They feel safe to let down their guard, to be more authentic, to respond from their own place of light rather than from their habitual patterns of darkness. This transformation in your relationships happens gradually as you consistently choose to speak and act from light rather than darkness. Some people in your life will welcome this change and begin to mirror it back to you. Others may initially resist it, especially if they have become accustomed to engaging with you through patterns of drama, conflict, or mutual criticism. Be patient with this process. Remember that others' patterns of relating are as deeply ingrained as yours once were. They may not immediately trust this new way you are showing up in the relationship. They may test you to see if you will revert to old patterns. They may even try to pull you back into familiar dynamics of darkness because, strange as it may seem, these patterns can feel safer than the unknown territory of authentic connection. Stay committed to speaking light regardless of how others respond. Your practice is not dependent on their participation. Your choice to live from love is not contingent on their choice to do the same. You speak light because it is your truth, because it serves your peace, because it honors the authentic being you are choosing to become. Over time, you may notice that some relationships deepen and become more meaningful as both people learn to interact from their places of truth and light. Other relationships may naturally fade as you discover that they were based primarily on shared patterns of darkness, complaining together, judging others together, reinforcing each other's limiting beliefs. This is not something to mourn, but something to celebrate. As you speak more light to yourself and others, you attract and create relationships that are based on authentic connection, mutual respect, and the shared commitment to growth and love. You discover that it is possible to have relationships that uplift rather than drain, that inspire rather than discourage, that create peace rather than drama. The wounds created by years of speaking darkness to yourself do not heal overnight. They are like deep cuts that need time, attention, and gentle care to mend completely. But every word of light you speak to yourself is like applying healing medicine to these wounds, gradually restoring your spirit to its natural state of wholeness and peace. These wounds were created by repetition, the same harsh words, the same cruel judgments, the same limiting beliefs spoken over and over until they carved deep grooves in your consciousness. They will be healed by repetition as well. The consistent choice to speak words of love, acceptance, understanding, and encouragement to yourself until these new words carve new grooves, new pathways of thought and feeling. Some of these wounds are ancient, created when you were very young and unable to distinguish between others' pain and truth. Perhaps someone important to you said you were not smart enough, not attractive enough, not talented enough, not lovable enough. That child within you accepted these words as absolute truth and has been carrying them ever since, allowing them to shape choices, relationships, and the very sense of what is possible in life. Healing these wounds requires you to speak to that wounded child within you the way a wise, loving parent would speak to a hurt child. You must tell this child the truth, that those words were never true, that they came from others' limitations, not from reality, that your worth has never been in question, that you are and have always been enough exactly as you are. This inner conversation with your wounded self might sound like, "I'm sorry you were told those things. I'm sorry you believed them for so long. But those words were never true about you. You are beautiful, you are intelligent, you are capable, you are worthy of love. You always have been and you always will be. I will never speak to you that way again. I will protect you with words of love." Sometimes speaking light to yourself brings up unexpected emotions. You might feel sad for all the years you spent being cruel to yourself. You might feel angry about the way others treated you. You might feel grief for the dreams you didn't pursue because you believed you weren't capable, for the love you didn't accept because you believed you weren't worthy. Allow these emotions to move through you without resistance. They are part of the healing process, part of releasing the old pain so that love can take its place. Cry if you need to cry. Feel the anger if it arises. Let yourself grieve for the time that was lost to the voice of darkness. This is not wallowing in the past, but honoring the journey that has brought you to this moment of choice. Forgiveness is an essential part of this healing, but not the kind of forgiveness that pretends nothing happened or that excuses harmful behavior. True forgiveness is the decision to stop poisoning yourself with resentment, to stop speaking words of darkness about those who hurt you, to stop carrying their pain as if it were your own burden to bear. Forgiveness of others begins with forgiveness of yourself. You must forgive yourself for all the years you spoke darkness to your own heart. You must forgive yourself for believing lies about your worth, your capabilities, your lovability. You must forgive yourself for the times you spoke darkness to others, for the wounds you may have created in your own unconsciousness. This self-forgiveness is not about condoning past behavior, but about choosing to speak light instead of darkness about your own journey. Instead of saying, "I can't believe I was so stupid for so long," you say, "I was doing the best I could with the understanding I had at the time. Now I know better, so I can do better." As you practice this gentle approach to your own healing, you discover that forgiveness becomes natural rather than forced. When you are no longer attacking yourself with words, you naturally stop attacking others as well. When you understand how unconsciousness creates suffering, you can have compassion for the unconsciousness in others that created your pain. The healing process is not linear. There will be days when you feel strong in your practice of speaking light, and there will be days when the old patterns feel overwhelming. This is natural and normal. Healing happens in waves, in cycles, in spirals that sometimes seem to take you backward before moving you forward again. Be patient with yourself during this process. Be gentle with the part of you that is learning a new way of being. Remember that you are not just changing your thoughts, you are changing the very foundation of how you relate to yourself and to life. This is profound work that touches the deepest levels of your being. Celebrate the small victories, the moments when you catch yourself about to speak darkness and choose light instead, the times when you respond to a challenge with grace rather than reactivity, the days when you notice that the voice of self-criticism has grown quieter. These moments of progress are precious and worthy of acknowledgement. And trust that every word of light you speak to yourself matters, even when you cannot see immediate results. Trust that your commitment to healing is changing you in ways that may not be visible on the surface, but are transforming the very fabric of your experience. Trust that love is stronger than fear, that truth is more powerful than illusion, that light will always ultimately dissolve darkness when given the chance. Living as a master of light does not mean achieving a state of perfection where you never experience challenges, never feel difficult emotions, never make mistakes. Mastery is not about eliminating the human experience, but about navigating it with consciousness, grace, and love. A master of light is someone who has learned to speak words that create peace rather than turmoil, love rather than fear, possibility rather than limitation. When you live as a master of light, you no longer need external circumstances to be perfect in order for you to be at peace. You carry your peace within you because you have learned to speak to yourself in ways that cultivate peace rather than destroy it. You no longer need others to behave a certain way in order for you to feel loved because you have learned to speak words of love to yourself. This inner stability, this emotional freedom is perhaps the greatest gift of learning to speak light. You discover that happiness is not something you must chase or achieve, but something you can create in any moment by choosing the words that honor your true nature and support your highest good. A master of light responds to mistakes with curiosity rather than condemnation. When something doesn't go as planned, instead of attacking yourself with criticism, you ask gentle questions. What can I learn from this? How can this experience help me grow? What would love do in this situation? You treat your errors as valuable information rather than evidence of your inadequacy. When faced with challenges, a master of light speaks words that acknowledge the difficulty while maintaining faith in their ability to navigate through it. Instead of, I can't handle this, you say, this is challenging and I am learning how to handle it. Instead of, why does this always happen to me? You say, this is what's happening now and I can choose how to respond. In relationships, a master of light speaks truth with kindness, sets boundaries with love, and offers forgiveness as a gift to themselves rather than as a requirement for others. You say what needs to be said without attacking. You ask for what you need without demanding. You give what feels genuine without depleting yourself. But perhaps most importantly, a master of light has learned to live with an open heart, even in a world that sometimes seems harsh or unfair. You understand that your choice to speak and embody light is not dependent on external conditions, but on your commitment to your own truth, your own healing, your own growth. This openness does not make you naive or vulnerable to harm. Rather, it makes you wise in a way that comes from deep self-knowledge and inner strength. When you know who you are, when you speak to yourself with love and respect, when you trust your ability to handle whatever arises, you can afford to keep your heart open because you are no longer afraid of being hurt. You recognize that closing your heart hurts you more than any external pain ever could. You understand that speaking darkness hurts you more than any criticism from others. You know that choosing fear over love diminishes your life more than any disappointment or loss. Living as a master of light means accepting responsibility for your inner state while releasing the need to control external circumstances. You focus your energy on what is truly within your power, your thoughts, your words, your responses, your choices, and you let go of trying to control what belongs to others or to life itself. This acceptance brings a profound sense of freedom and peace. You are no longer exhausted by trying to control things that are beyond your control. You are no longer frustrated by others' choices to live in darkness because you know that their choice does not have to affect your choice to live in light. You become a stable presence in an unstable world, a source of calm in the midst of chaos, a beacon of possibility for others who are still learning to navigate the journey from darkness to light. Your very presence becomes a gift to the world because you embody the truth that it is possible to live with love, peace, and authentic power regardless of external circumstances. This mastery is not a destination you reach once and then maintain effortlessly. It is a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice, A commitment that you renew each time you notice yourself beginning to slip back into old patterns of speaking darkness. But the more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until speaking light feels as automatic as speaking darkness once did. The journey of learning to speak light, to banish the inner darkness, is not a journey that ends. It is a path that continues to unfold, to deepen, to reveal new layers of understanding and possibility for as long as you walk this earth. Each day offers new opportunities to practice, new challenges that invite you to choose love over fear, new moments to discover what it means to live as a free and authentic being. This ongoing nature of the journey is not a burden, but a gift. It means that you are always growing, always learning, always becoming more of who you truly are. It means that there is no point at which you must stop evolving, no limit to how much love you can embody, no ceiling on the peace and joy that are possible in your life. Some days, the practice of speaking light will feel effortless, natural, like breathing. On these days, you might feel amazed at how far you have come, how different your inner world has become from the place of constant criticism and fear where you once lived. Celebrate these days. Let them fill you with gratitude and wonder at the power of consciousness to transform experience. Other days, the old patterns of darkness will feel strong, persistent, almost overwhelming. On these days, you might feel discouraged, wondering if you are making any real progress, questioning whether this work is actually changing anything. Be especially gentle with yourself on these days. Remember that the very fact that you notice the darkness is evidence of your growth. There was a time when these patterns were so unconscious that you couldn't see them at all. The spiral nature of growth means that sometimes you will revisit old wounds, old patterns, old fears, but from a different level of understanding. What once felt devastating may now feel manageable. What once seemed impossible to heal may now feel workable. You bring new tools, new awareness, new compassion to challenges that once overwhelmed you completely. Trust this process, even when you cannot see where it is leading. Trust that every moment you spend speaking light to yourself matters, even when the results are not immediately visible. Trust that your commitment to living authentically, to treating yourself with love, to choosing truth over illusion is contributing to your own evolution and to the healing of the world. Because this is what happens when individuals learn to speak light. It ripples out into their families, their communities, their world. Children grow up hearing words of encouragement instead of criticism. Partners learn to support each other's growth instead of reinforcing each other's fears. Co-workers experience collaboration instead of competition. The light that you speak to yourself becomes the light that illuminates every life you touch. Remember that you are not trying to become someone different from who you are. You are simply remembering who you have always been beneath all the programming, all the wounds, all the learned patterns of darkness. You are returning to your original nature, the nature that exists before fear, before judgment, before the belief that you are separate from love. This original nature is not something you need to create or achieve. It is something you need to uncover, to remember, to speak into existence with words of truth and love. It has been waiting patiently beneath all the darkness, like the sun behind clouds, like a seed beneath soil, like a flame that can never be extinguished no matter how much darkness surrounds it. In every moment you have the power to choose. You can speak words that honor this original nature or words that obscure it. You can choose thoughts that connect you to your truth or thoughts that separate you from it. You can respond to life from your place of wisdom and love or react from your old patterns of fear and limitation. This choice is always available to you, no matter what has happened in your past, no matter what is happening in your present, no matter what fears you carry about the future. In this very moment, you can choose to speak light. You can choose to treat yourself as the precious being you are. You can choose to live from love rather than fear. And in making this choice again and again, moment after moment, day after day, you discover that you are not a victim of your circumstances, but the creator of your experience. You are not bound by your past, but free to create your future. You are not Surit. Separate from love, but the very expression of love, learning to recognize itself. This is the journey, not from darkness to light, but the remembering that you are light, temporarily having the experience of forgetting. This is the awakening, not to something new, but to something eternal that has always been true. This is the healing, not of something broken, but the restoration of something whole that was never actually damaged, only obscured by illusion. Speak light, beloved one. Speak light to the tender places in your heart. Speak light to the parts of yourself that still carry fear. Speak light to your dreams, your hopes, your infinite potential. Let your words become medicine for your soul, bridges to your truth, pathways to the love that you are and have always been. The darkness you have carried was never your enemy. It was your teacher, showing you by contrast the preciousness of light. Now that you have learned its lessons, you can thank it for its service and choose differently. You can speak words that honor your journey while creating a reality that serves your highest good. This is your invitation, your opportunity, your birthright to live as the magnificent being you truly are. Speaking words that create beauty, love, and peace in your life and in the world. The time for living in the shadows of other people's fears is over. The time for speaking the language of your true nature has begun. Somewhere beneath the mental noise, beneath the familiar patterns of self-judgment and fear, there is a place of stillness, a place of knowing, a place of peace. This is not something you need to create or achieve. It is something you need to remember, something you need to uncover, like brushing away dust from a precious jewel. The journey from darkness to light is not about fighting with your thoughts or trying to force yourself to think positively. It is about understanding the nature of the darkness, seeing how it was created, and gently choosing a different way. It is about learning to speak to yourself as you would speak to a beloved friend, with kindness, with patience, with love. Every moment offers you this choice, to speak words that create more darkness or to speak words that bring light. Every interaction with yourself, every internal conversation, every response to life's challenges, all of these are opportunities to practice choosing light over darkness, love over fear, truth over the lies you have been taught to believe about yourself. From the moment you drew your first breath, you began learning how to be human by watching and listening to the humans around you. Like a small mirror, you reflected everything you saw and heard, not knowing that what you were absorbing would become the foundation of how you would later speak to yourself. Your parents, your teachers, your family members, they all had their own voices of darkness, their own fears and limitations that had been passed down to them from their parents and teachers. When they spoke to you, they often spoke not from their place of love and wisdom, but from their own wounds, their own programming, their own unconscious patterns. When a parent says to a child, "Why can't you do anything right?" they are not speaking truth. They are speaking from their own frustration, their own fear, their own learn, patterns of how to respond to mistakes. But the child's innocent mind does not know this. The child hears these words and thinks, "I cannot do anything right. There is something wrong with me." When a teacher grows impatient and says, "You're not smart enough," or when other children say, "You're weird," or "You don't belong," the pure heart of the child accepts these statements as facts about reality, rather than understanding them as expressions of others' pain, fear, or confusion. Layer by layer, word by word, you built an internal voice that learned to speak to you the way the world spoke to you. If the world around you was often critical, your internal voice learned to be critical. If the people in your life were afraid, your internal voice learned to live in fear. If those who raised you believed they were not worthy of love, your internal voice learned to question your own worthiness. This process of learning to be human, which the Toltecs called domestication, is like training a wild animal. A wild horse runs free across the plains, following its natural instincts, living in harmony with its true nature. But when humans capture this horse, they must break its spirit, teach it to ignore its instincts, and make it obedient to commands that often go against its nature. Your original nature was wild and free, like that horse. You knew how to trust yourself, how to express yourself authentically, how to love without conditions. But through the process of domestication, you learn to ignore your inner knowing, to doubt your natural instincts, and to follow rules and beliefs that often created suffering rather than joy. The voice that now speaks in your mind carries all of these learned patterns. When you make a mistake, it speaks with the voice of every person who ever criticized you. When you try something new, it speaks with the voice of everyone who ever told you that you were not capable. When you consider expressing your truth, it speaks with the voice of all those who taught you that it was not safe to be yourself. But here is what you must understand. This voice, though it seems so real and authoritative, is not you. It is a collection of other people's fears, other people's limitations, other people's pain. You learn to speak to yourself this way. But it was never your natural language. Consider how you speak to a small child when they are learning to walk. When they fall down, you do not say, "You're so clumsy, you'll never learn to walk." Instead, you encourage them. You celebrate their attempts. You speak words that support their learning and growth. This is how your true voice would speak to you, with encouragement, with patience, with love. The process of returning to your authentic voice requires you to become aware of this learned voice with compassion rather than judgment. Notice when the voice of darkness speaks. Notice its familiar patterns, its favorite criticisms, its recurring fears. But instead of fighting with it or believing it, simply observe it as you would observe a radio playing in another room. You can hear it, but you do not have to listen to it, and you certainly do not have to believe that it is speaking the truth about who you are. Every word that has ever been spoken to you, every word you have ever heard, every word you have ever spoken, all of these words carry power. But perhaps you have not fully recognized just how much power lives within the words we speak and think. In the Toltec tradition, we understand that the word is not merely a sound that travels through the air. The word is a force of creation, a tool of magic, a power that can create or destroy, that can heal or wound, that can set you free or bind you in chains of suffering. Think about this. Everything that exists in the human world was first created with words. Before there were buildings, someone spoke words about architecture. Before there was music, someone spoke words about melody and rhythm. Before there was love between two people, someone spoke words that opened the heart. The word is the beginning of all creation. But words do not only create external things, words create your internal reality as well. The words you speak to yourself create the world you live in inside your own mind. If you speak words of limitation, you create a limited world. If you speak words of fear, you create a fearful world. If you speak words of judgment, you create a world where you are constantly being judged. Your mind is like fertile soil, and words are like seeds. Whatever seeds you plant will grow. If you plant seeds of criticism, criticism will grow in the garden of your mind. If you plant seeds of doubt, doubt will flourish. If you plant seeds of unworthiness, you will harvest feelings of not being enough. But the same soil that can grow weeds can also grow flowers. The same mind that has learned to create suffering through words can learn to create beauty, peace, and joy through different words. You have this choice in every moment. What seeds will you plant in the garden of your consciousness? Most people do not realize they have this choice because they have become unconscious of the words they speak to themselves. Like breathing, the internal dialogue has become so automatic that it happens without awareness. But just as you can become conscious of your breath and choose to breathe more deeply, you can become conscious of your words and choose to speak more lovingly. Notice right now what words your mind is speaking. Perhaps it is analyzing these ideas. Perhaps it is agreeing or disagreeing. Perhaps it is planning what you will do after this conversation ends. These words are creating your experience of this very moment. They are either bringing you closer to peace or pulling you further from it. The ancient Toltecs knew that the word has the power to break spells as well as cast them. Most of us live under spells that were cast long ago, spells of believing we are not enough, spells of believing we are separate from love, spells of believing that life is meant to be a struggle. These spells were cast with words, and they can be broken with words. When you begin to speak words of truth instead of words of illusion, when you begin to speak words of love instead of words of fear, when you begin to speak words of possibility instead of words of limitation, you begin to break the spells that have held you captive. But breaking these spells requires more than simply thinking positive thoughts or repeating affirmations. It requires a fundamental shift in how you understand the nature of truth. Most of the words you speak to yourself are not based on truth at all, but on assumptions, on old programming, on fears that may have no basis in reality. Consider how often you say to yourself, "I always mess things up," or "Nobody really understands me," or "I'm not good at this." These statements feel true because you have repeated them so many times. But are they actually true? Have you always messed everything up? Does nobody in the entire world understand you? Are you truly incapable of learning and growing in areas where you currently feel unskilled? When you begin to question the words you speak to yourself, when you begin to examine whether they are based on truth or on old programming, you begin to reclaim your power as the creator of your own reality. You begin to understand that you have been living in a dream created by words, and you have the power to dream a different dream. The word is sacred because it connects the invisible world of thoughts and feelings with the visible world of experience and action. When you speak words of love to yourself, you create the experience of being loved. When you speak words of respect to yourself, you create the experience of being respected. When you speak words of possibility to yourself, you create the experience of living in a world full of possibilities. This is not magic in the sense of fantasy, but magic in the sense of understanding how life truly works. You are always creating your reality through the words you speak, both silently and aloud. The question is not whether you will create, but what you will create. Will you create a reality based on love or on fear? Will you create a reality based on truth or on illusion? Will you create a reality that serves your highest good, or one that perpetuates your suffering? Within your mind live two characters that have been creating most of your suffering, though you may not have recognized them clearly before. These characters are so familiar, so much a part of your daily experience that you might think they are simply who you are, but they are not. They are learned roles, adopted personalities that were developed as survival mechanisms in a world that seemed dangerous and unpredictable. The first character is what we call the judge. This is the voice that constantly evaluates everything, yourself, others, situations, even life itself. The judge has an opinion about everything you do, everything you say, everything you think. It compares you to others and finds you lacking. It reminds you of your past mistakes and predicts your future failures. It tells you that you should be different, better, more accomplished, more attractive, more intelligent, more worthy. Listen carefully to your mind for a moment and you will likely hear the judge speaking. You should have done that differently. Look how much better they are than you. You're running out of time. You're not working hard enough. People will think you're foolish. The judge speaks with authority, as if it knows the absolute truth about everything, but its truth is based on fear, comparison, and the impossible standards it learned from the world around you. The judge is not content to criticize only you. It extends its evaluation to everyone and everything in your life. It judges your family, your friends, your co-workers. It judges the weather, the traffic, the government, the state of the world. This constant judging creates a reality where nothing is ever quite right, where there is always something to complain about, something to fix, something to resist. But the judge does not work alone. It has a companion, a partner in the creation of suffering. This is the victim. While the judge attacks, the victim defends. While the judge criticizes, the victim feels hurt. While the judge demands perfection, the victim feels overwhelmed and defeated. The victim is the part of you that feels sorry for yourself, that believes life is unfair, that thinks others have it easier. The victim tells stories about how you have been wronged, how you have been misunderstood, how circumstances are beyond your control. It collects evidence of injustice, builds cases for why you have the right to feel angry, sad, or hopeless. The victim's favorite phrases include, "It's not my fault. Why does this always happen to me? Nobody appreciates what I do. Life is so hard. I can't help the way I am." The victim sees itself as powerless, at the mercy of external forces, unable to change its circumstances or its experience. These two voices, the judge and the victim, feed each other in an endless cycle. The judge criticizes and the victim feels hurt. The victim feels hurt, so the judge criticizes more, trying to motivate change through harsh words. The judge compares you to others, and the victim feels inadequate. The victim feels inadequate, so the judge works harder to point out your flaws, believing that criticism will somehow lead to improvement. This cycle can continue for years, for decades, even for an entire lifetime, creating a kind of internal war where you are both the attacker and the attacked, both the prosecutor and the defendant. It is exhausting and it is completely unnecessary. But here is what you must understand. Neither the judge nor the victim represents your true nature. They are both learned responses, coping mechanisms that developed when you were young and vulnerable and needed ways to navigate a complex world. The judge developed as an attempt to help you fit in, to help you avoid making mistakes that might lead to rejection or punishment. The victim developed as a way to cope with the pain when the judge's strategies failed, when you were criticized or rejected despite your best efforts. These parts of you or mine were trying to protect you, trying to help you survive in what seemed like a dangerous emotional environment. But what was once protection has now become prison. What was once a survival strategy has now become a source of suffering. Recognizing the judge and the victim is not about fighting with them or trying to eliminate them completely. It is about seeing them clearly, understanding their function, and choosing not to identify with them. When you hear the voice of the judge, you can acknowledge it without believing it. When you feel the emotions of the victim, you can feel them without becoming them. You are not the judge, though the judge speaks in your mind. You are not the victim, though the victim's emotions move through your body. You are the awareness that observes both, the consciousness that can choose which voice to listen to, which story to believe, which role to play. In this recognition lies the beginning of freedom. When you stop identifying completely with the judge and the victim, you create space for your authentic voice to emerge, the voice that speaks with wisdom rather than criticism, with love rather than judgment, with empowerment rather than victimization. In every moment of your life, you stand at a crossroads. You may not have realized this before, but it is true. In every moment, you have a choice that is far more powerful than any external decision you could make. This is the choice between speaking light or speaking darkness, between creating a reality based on love or creating a reality based on fear. This choice is not always obvious because it happens so quickly, so automatically, that you may miss it entirely. Something happens. Perhaps someone speaks to you in a way you don't like. Perhaps you make a mistake. Perhaps you receive news that disappoints you. In that instant, faster than conscious thought, your mind begins to create a story about what this means. And that story is built with words. You can choose to speak darkness. This always happens to me. I never get what I want. People don't respect me. I'm unlucky. Life is unfair. Or you can choose to speak light. This is challenging, but I can handle it. This experience is teaching me something. I have the strength to respond with grace. This too shall pass. The circumstances themselves are neutral. A rainstorm is just water falling from the sky. A person's words are just sounds in the air. A change in your life is just a change. But the words you speak about these circumstances, either silently to yourself or aloud to others, create your experience of them. These words determine whether you suffer or whether you remain at peace. Most people do not realize they have this choice because the pattern of speaking darkness has become so automatic, so habitual, that it seems like the only natural response. When something bad happens, it seems obvious that you should feel bad, think negative thoughts, speak words of complaint or worry. But this is not obvious at all. This is learned. Consider a small child who falls down while playing. Their first response is not to create a story about how clumsy they are or how unfair. It is that they fell. Their first response is simply to notice what happened and then decide what to do next. They might cry for a moment to release the shock, but then they get up and continue playing. They do not carry the story of the fall with them, creating meaning and drama around something that is simply part of the experience of learning to walk. You can return to this natural way of responding to life. You can learn to meet whatever arises with presence rather than story, with curiosity rather than judgment, with acceptance rather than resistance. This does not mean becoming passive or failing to take appropriate action. It means responding from a place of clarity rather than reacting from a place of unconscious programming. The choice between light and darkness is available to you right now in this very moment. As you listen to these words, your mind is either speaking words that support your peace and growth, or it is speaking words that create agitation and resistance. Notice what your internal voice is saying. Is it judging these ideas? Is it comparing them to other things you have heard? Is it planning what you will do next instead of being present to what is happening now? Whatever your mind is doing, you can choose differently. You can speak words of openness. I am curious about this perspective. You can speak words of presence. I am here in this moment listening. You can speak words of possibility. Perhaps there is something here that can help me grow. This choice becomes easier with practice, but it requires vigilance in the beginning. The patterns of speaking darkness are strong because they have been reinforced for so many years. Like water flowing down a hill, your thoughts tend to follow the channels that have been carved by repetition. But you can create new channels. You can train your mind to flow in the direction of light instead of darkness. The key is not to judge yourself when you notice that you have chosen darkness. Judgment is itself a form of darkness. Instead, simply notice, breathe, and choose again. Each moment offers a fresh opportunity to speak light. Each conversation with yourself is a chance to practice love instead of criticism, trust instead of fear, possibility instead of limitation. This choice is the foundation of all personal freedom. When you are no longer at the mercy of unconscious mental patterns, when you can consciously choose the words that create your reality, you become the master of your own experience. External circumstances may still challenge you, but they no longer control your inner state. You remain free to choose your response, free to speak words that serve your highest good. Speaking light to yourself is perhaps the most radical act of self-love you can practice. After years of internal criticism, after decades of speaking to yourself in ways you would never speak to a beloved friend, the simple act of choosing kind words can feel revolutionary. But speaking light is not the same as pretending everything is perfect when it is not. It is not about denying your feelings or forcing yourself to think positive thoughts when you are genuine, like struggling. Speaking light means telling yourself the truth with love instead of telling yourself lies with cruelty. When you make a mistake, speaking darkness sounds like, I'm so stupid, I always mess things up, I should have known better, I'm a failure. Speaking light sounds like, I made a mistake and that's part of being human, I can learn from this. I am still worthy of love and respect. I will do better next time because I know better now. Both responses acknowledge that a mistake was made, but they create completely different emotional and energetic experiences. The darkness creates shame, self-attack, and often paralysis. The light creates learning, growth, and motivation to continue trying. When you are facing a challenge, speaking darkness sounds like, this is too hard. I can't handle this. Bad things always happen to me. I don't have what it takes. Speaking light sounds like, this is challenging and I have faced challenges before. I may not know how to handle this yet, but I can learn. I have inner resources I haven't discovered yet. I am stronger than I know. When you are feeling hurt by someone else's actions, speaking darkness sounds like, they don't care about me. I'm not important to them. People always let me down. I can't trust anyone. Speaking light sounds like they are acting from their own pain right now. This isn't really about me. I can choose how to respond. I can protect myself with love rather than attacking with anger. Speaking light requires you to become very honest about the difference between facts and stories. Facts are what actually happened. Stories are the meanings you add to what happened. Most of your suffering comes not from the facts of your life, but from the stories you tell yourself about those facts. The fact might be, my friend did not call me back. The dark story might be, she doesn't care about me anymore. I must have done something wrong. I'm not important to her. The light story might be, she might be busy or dealing with something difficult, or she simply forgot. I can reach out again or wait to hear from her without making it mean something about my worth. As you practice speaking light to yourself, you will notice that your relationship with yourself begins to change. The harsh internal critic that has been your constant companion begins to soften. You start to feel safer in your own mind, more supported by your own inner voice. You begin to trust yourself more, to feel more confident in your ability to handle whatever life brings. This practice also changes how you speak to others. When you are no longer attacking yourself with words, you naturally stop attacking others as well. When you are treating yourself with kindness and respect, you find it easier to extend kindness and respect to those around you. The light you speak to yourself becomes the light you bring to every relationship, every interaction, every moment of your life. But remember, this is a practice, not a perfection. There will be times when you forget, when the old patterns of speaking darkness feel stronger than your intention to speak light. In these moments, the most important thing is to treat yourself with compassion rather than criticism. Notice that you have slipped into darkness, take a breath, and gently redirect your words toward light. Each time you choose to speak light instead of darkness, you are rewiring your mind, creating new pathways of thought, new habits of internal dialogue. You are literally changing the structure of your consciousness, moving from a foundation of fear and criticism to a foundation of love and support. This is not always easy work, especially in the beginning. Your mind may resist, telling you that speaking light is unrealistic, that you need to be hard on yourself to motivate change, that positive self-talk is just wishful thinking. But this resistance comes from the very patterns you are working to change. The judge and the victim do not want to lose their power over you, so they will argue for the necessity of their presence. Trust the process. Trust that speaking words of truth and love to yourself is not weakness but strength, not delusion but clarity, not selfishness but the foundation for being able to truly serve others. When you fill your own cup with light, you have light to offer the world. When you begin to speak light to yourself, something beautiful and unexpected happens in all of your relationships.